walk in my shoes. I'm so happy you're joining us today on one more episode of this amazing program for young people like you who have a desire to get better in life and to learn and to improve. My name is Dan Vasquez, and I will be your host for today. And I'm so excited to have our guest today, Corey, Michael Corey, who is the executive director of the Human Service Chamber of Franklin County. So before I introduce him, let me read a little bit about him. About Michael, he has made himself indispensable to the city's social services, to nonprofits, and in just a few short years at the helm of the Human Service Chamber at Franklin County, since he joined in 2017, it has grown from 48 to 79 members, making it the largest chamber that has ever been. The organization is embedded in issues ranging from advocacy for refugees to food stamps to workforce and immigration policy. The chamber was named one of the 5 nonprofits to watch in 2019 by the Columbus Foundation, and it has made significant strides toward the goal of growing and strengthening one voice on behalf of the human service sector, says Board Chair King Stump, CEO of the Netcare Access. Corey previously was an associate at the Bricker and Eckler and has worked for the Hillary for America, Children's Defense Fund, U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown, and Children's Hunger Alliance. Corey holds a Juris Doctor from the Ohio State University Moritz College of Law. So that's a mouthful right there of achievements you have achieved, Corey, and welcome, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Well, it's an honor. Thank you so much for that very warm introduction. I'm so excited to talk to you and some of the young people that you work with today, and eager to share hopefully anything that might be of interest and value to share with all of you. It's certainly been a circuitous path into this job, which I started in April of 2017, but I have truly loved every second of it. I feel like I have the best job in the world, and I'm happy to explain to people what it is exactly our organization is and what we do. Most people kind of furrow their brow when I tell them that I work at the Human Service Chamber of Franklin County, which isn't the most intuitive of names of organizations. Right. When I started, I actually asked my board chair, can our first order of business be to change the name of our organization? And they said absolutely not. We're actually already second guessing hiring you, Michael. So I haven't done that just yet. But I'm very excited to be talking with all of you today, and happy to answer any questions and share my story with everyone here.
Well, we're so delighted to have you, and we're really thankful for your time. We know you are busy. And just to help our audience and the young people watching us today, so in a nutshell, what's kind of the work that you do on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So generally speaking, our organization is just like any other chamber of commerce that you would see in the business world. We're just focused on health and human services nonprofits that work in the Columbus area. And our job is primarily to provide advocacy for all of our member organizations for the breadth of the health and human services sector. And that means we're trying to get the mayor and city council and the county commissioners and people at the state house and our representatives in Congress all to better serve or uniquely serve the organizations that we represent. We have lots of other functions though too, trying to provide assistance to the organizations that we serve. Some of that's information, some of that's analysis, some of that's driving collaboration, some of that's trying to make trainings available. It kind of runs the gamut in terms of what we do. And every day, especially since the coronavirus crisis began, is a little bit different than I expect it to be. I have very few scheduled events like this one where I know, generally speaking, okay, that's how my next hour is going to go. Beyond that, everything is sort of up in the air, as I know it is with so many of you, so many of the people that you are serving, so many of you right now. And our job is to be as nimble as we can be at the Human Service Chamber and try and help all these nonprofits that are trying to help so many people in our community.
So Corey, you use the word very key that I think is important for young people to understand. You use the word advocacy. Can you explain in a few words what does that mean? What does advocacy mean?
Right. It means different things to different people. But to me, advocacy means trying to convince others to do something different or better.
Wait. Can you please repeat that again? Because somebody needs to write that down.
uh, to me, advocacy is trying to convince someone to do things differently or to do them better.
That's awesome.
When people hear the word advocacy, they usually assume that you're lobbying. And lobbying is actually a legal term. Lobbying is something that has restrictions on it. And that basically is, to be a lobbyist, you are paid to convince lawmakers, legislators, people that work at the state house, people that work in Congress. You're trying to convince them to vote differently or to allocate dollars in a certain way. As an advocate, you're not necessarily trying to get someone to vote one way or another. You're trying to build relationships with public officials, trying to get them to act in a different way, or maybe you just want to thank them for something that they have done. Maybe you're trying to connect them with resources or with other people that can be a resource for them. So to me, at the chamber, our job is completely tethered to relationships in the advocacy space. If no one wants to hear what I have to say, if no one's willing to be persuaded or consider being persuaded by what we have to say at the chamber, then I would just be speaking into the air. No one's going to be affected by that.
Right.
So we need to be focused on relationships first, and then try to make the argument or try to share information or try to be a connector to be of benefit to the organizations that we serve. And we try to approach this issue by issue. We are by definition not a partisan organization. We're not pro-Republican, we're not pro-Democrat, we are pro-issues. And we try to take the breadth of the issues and the individual issues that our members bring to us, and they say, this is what we think about this is what we want you to champion for us. And then my job is to go do that. And we try to do that as effectively as we can with the team that we have in place and with the volunteers that we have in place and with all of our members working in concert as much as we possibly can. The goal of all of that is to represent a single voice on behalf of the health and human services sector on all these different issues. So right now, our advocacy is laser focused on how do we get our member organizations the financial resources they need to keep operating and meeting the needs of our community through this crisis. And that's a lot of work.
Yeah, that is so important right now, and it's so key because, as this situation with COVID-19 has affected everybody, nobody is excluded from this, and the work that you're doing is certainly key to be able to get funds so that people can continue with their jobs and things can continue moving. So that's is that a rewarding thing for you?
It is. I wish that it weren't necessary. I wish that my job were not remotely necessary. I wish that we had everybody on the same page and we could all agree this is important, let's make it happen. And that isn't always the case, unfortunately. So the job is instead to try and get as full and representative a sense of where our agencies are at and what they need, what their asks are, what their challenges are, where they see opportunities, and then translate that and communicate that to our elected officials and public officials. And for the most part, we are very, very fortunate in our community in that we have city, county, state, and federal elected officials that really care about the issues of our members. And it's not hard to convince them to care about the issues. The hard part is, how do we get it done? How do we get done what we need to get done? That's where the differences can arise. And there are some issues where, independent of this crisis, there is widespread agreement. This is important to us, and we want to push together to make something happen. So, for example, one of the issues that has very little pushback from the folks that we work with is food stamps. Whether Republican or Democrat.
What was that? Could you repeat that issue?
Yeah, food stamps.
Food stamps.
Also known as SNAP. Yeah. There are Democrats and Republicans alike that believe firmly that we need to make food stamps available to those in need, and more broadly, that access to food, especially for children, is important. And we've been able to work with Republicans and Democrats to try and increase access to food stamps, increase access to food.
Yes.
And especially during this crisis, when the first thing everyone worried about was, will we be able to get a meal? Democrats and Republicans like that we work with have been, eager to listen to the problems and eager to try and identify solutions so that people aren't hungry through this crisis. That's sort of the foundational level that we try to get to with things. There are other issues where that is not the case. There are other issues that are more contentious, and that's where we have our work cut out for us a little bit more. And then there are issues where we all kind of philosophically agree, yeah, that's important. We want to help, but there are limited resources to get that done. And I think the funding piece for the COVID-19 response is the big challenge. There are only so many dollars from the federal government available to help all the nonprofits in need, and certainly to help all of the people in need. So our job is to try and work with our partners in government and help them as they make decisions about where those dollars will go. And we want to make sure those dollars are spread out to all of our members, but that they can then be spent wisely to maximize their effectiveness. And yeah, I definitely appreciate the opportunity to be doing that work right now. I just wish that we all weren't in the dire straits that we're unfortunately in.
Right. Yes, I agree with you. It's a very unfortunate situation in which we are right now, but hopefully we can get out of it together and we can step out. Now, Corey, we want to get to know you a little bit better. Why don't you tell us your story? Tell us where you're from, where you grew up, what did you study, and how did you end up where you are right now?
Sure. So I'll start way back before I was even around. I am the proud grandson of Lebanese immigrants. I'm the last 100% Lebanese person in my family. If you've never heard of Lebanon, it's a very, very small country on the Mediterranean Sea in the Middle East. It's tiny. I mean, I'm not even sure that it's bigger than Ohio. And my grandparents came over in two different waves in the 1910s and 20s, looking for opportunities, as so many immigrants come to this country looking for opportunities. And they came through Ellis Island in New York. On my dad's side, my paternal grandfather came through and couldn't speak a lick of English. And when they asked him what his name was, he said, Khoury. It's supposed to be Khoury. And at Ellis Island, they just spelled it out phonetically as best they could, Corey, and we never corrected it. A lot of my family settled in West Virginia and worked first in coal mines and then in grocery stores. And there was a Corey grocery store in Charleston, West Virginia for several years. On my mom's side, they settled in Toledo, Ohio, where there is a very large Lebanese population. Why they chose Toledo, I couldn't really tell you, aside from there were already Lebanese people there, so my Lebanese family went there too. My parents knew each other as kids. They met at a Lebanese gathering in West Virginia one summer, and they became friends and remained friends, and then started dating. And lo and behold, they got married in the early 1970s and moved to Columbus because it was halfway between Toledo and Charleston and their families. I was born in 1982, which means I'm old. And I grew up in Columbus. I did not know what I wanted to do professionally when I went to college. I went to college out of state at a place called Duke University. When I got there, I thought, I might want to be a pediatrician. I really like working with kids. And that changed after about a week of chemistry class. I could not stand chemistry class. I don't know why. And I immediately switched gears into the humanities and really liked history and English and political science. And I ended up studying those. So I did lots of reading and writing in college.
Wow.
While I was in college, I was working with the student newspaper. I worked in the sports, for the sports department. I covered a lot of basketball games and football games and soccer games and so on and so forth. Didn't want to do that professionally on the sports side, but I thought I want to be a journalist someday.
Okay.
And at some point during my senior year, I decided, journalism isn't quite what I want to do. I want to be more on the policy side of things instead of writing about the policy side of things. So I graduated in 2005 from college. My dad had just passed away from cancer that spring of my senior year, so it was really important for me to be home in Columbus. But I knew at that point what my new focus was in the policy space. It was education policy. And I really had been struck by the incredible inequities that exist in our educational system. And there were two things that I wanted to change as a 22-year-old. I wanted to change the way we fund public schools, and I wanted to tackle the resegregation of public schools. So as a 22-year-old, I started looking for a job where I could do that or support that effort. And I found a job at a place called the Ohio Board of Regents, which doesn't really exist in the same ways it once did before, but it's kind of like a Department of Education, but for colleges and universities. So I worked there as a contractor for about a year. And I was largely doing research and writing reports and doing some analysis. And I really liked it, but there was a clear ceiling on what I could do in that job unless I had some sort of specialized education in the field. So I left after a year and got a master's degree from Ohio State School of Education Policy. And I absolutely loved the program. There were a lot of people that were like me. They were not wanting to go into academia, but wanted to get into the policy side of things. So I had a lot of peers from whom I could learn. And yet, when I graduated, I was pretty confident that I also wanted to go to law school, because the way in which I thought I could further some of these changes in education policy was by having a law degree. So the timing was weird, and I had about a year between the time I graduated from grad school and the time I could start law school. So I had a couple of odd jobs. I worked on a political campaign briefly. I worked at a nonprofit called the Children's Hunger Alliance for a few months. I went back to the Board of Regents for a spell. And then in the fall of 2009, I started at Ohio State's law school and absolutely loved it. I loved my classmates. I loved my professors. I didn't exactly love final exams. I don't think anybody really enjoys that. And it kicked my butt. It was very hard work. Law school is a unique challenge. I would encourage anyone thinking about that someday to strongly do so, but it's hard, as you would expect law school to be. I spent part of my first year externing for an organization called the Kirwan Institute, which is operated by Ohio State. It's the Center for Race and Ethnic Studies. And part of my externship there, or internship there, I can't remember what we called it, was to advise the State School Boards Association on how to navigate Supreme Court precedent on race-based school placement. So the kind of work that I was so interested in doing, I got to support at the Kirwan Institute. I spent my first summer working for Sherrod Brown, one of our two U.S. senators of Washington, D.C., and I was excited to work for him, especially because he was on the Education Committee in the Senate. Again, I got to go do a lot of research and writing and living in D.C., which was a lot of fun. It was very hot. It was 150 degrees every day. I showed up to my first day of that internship, and I had walked from the subway to the office, and I was drenched in sweat, absolutely drenched in sweat. I'm a sweaty guy anyway. Lebanese guys are sweaty. And I ran into Senator Brown the next day, and I had just gotten to the office again, and he looked at me, and he said, "It's Mike, right?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Gosh, you're sweaty." So my reputation immediately in that office on the Capitol was of being the sweaty guy. So I had to work really hard to earn some sort of substantive reputation thereafter.
Yeah.
So I love the experience there, but I knew when that was over that I didn't want to live in DC long term. I wanted to come back to Columbus. So I found a job as a summer clerk and then as a full-time lawyer at a law firm called Bricker and Eckler. And I wanted to go there because they have a robust education law practice. And 20 years ago, they had successfully challenged the way we funded public schools in Ohio. So I was arrogant and delusional enough to think that when I started there as a new attorney in 2012, I could just jump right into that work. And of course, that wasn't the case. In fact, they asked me to be a healthcare attorney and work in the healthcare practice. So that's what I did. I was representing and working with hospitals for 3 years. And as much as I loved the firm and the people there, that wasn't the work that I had intended to do. I wanted to tackle inequities in education. So I had kept an eye open for the right opportunity that I could move toward. And I found one at the Children's Defense Fund of Ohio, which is another nonprofit. It's a civil rights organization founded in the 1970s in DC, and they have an Ohio affiliate. So I started there as a policy analyst in the fall of 2015. Loved the work. It wasn't education focused, though. It was largely healthcare, just a very different kind of healthcare than I had done before. And it was, again, lots of research and writing. That was where I did a lot of advocacy work, working especially with state officials, talking about Medicaid, talking about lead, and how do we remediate lead and get that out of homes, and how do we get more dollars into our communities and through our job and family services facilities across the state to help people. I love the work. But at the same time, I felt a draw to work on one of the two presidential campaigns, and I will let you guess which one I chose to work on. I did that then starting in the summer of 2016 for about 110 days doing voter protection work. Wow. So I was up in Toledo, Ohio, driving on during the week, I should say. I drove up on Monday morning and came back Friday night and worked in Toledo doing voter protection work, kind of a general counsel for all of the organizers on the campaign, but also trying to recruit lawyers to serve during the early voting period on election day to monitor the polls to make sure that nothing inappropriate was happening at the polls. After the campaign was over, I knew I'd be unemployed and that I'd have to find my next passion, my next job. And I moved back to Columbus on November 9th, 2016. I ate my feelings for about a month. And then I started looking. And I really wanted to be at a nonprofit or a government organization where I could help people or use my skills in such a way that I could help people. And in March of 2017, I heard of something called the Human Service Chamber. I'd never heard of it before, but I looked at the website, I talked to some people, and its mission of serving as one voice on behalf of all of these wonderful nonprofits felt like a really good fit for me. And they were foolish enough to hire me. I started in April of 2017, and they're stuck with me now. So that is my very long journey into this role. That was a much longer answer than you anticipated, but I just gave you everything you could possibly want to know.
Michael, as I'm listening to your story, it seems to me like every little step that you took or every new phase was a preparation to where you are right now. It seems like everything was just falling into place to get you to your position right now. And one things that, I mean, you've done incredible variety of types of jobs, but one thing that catches my attention is that it seems like you have been able to maintain a passion for what you had when you first started. When you told me what, 16 years old as a son of immigrants, and you keep that passion. What would you tell a young person, somebody that has a passion but doesn't know what to do next? How do I move my passion in this life? What should I do?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I appreciate what you said. If I'm honest, I didn't always have jobs that matched my passion, much as I wanted them to. and I did my best to bring passion to the job, no matter what it was. But that wasn't always the case, and that was probably the hardest part. Is that I knew the kind of work that I wanted to be in. I knew the end I wanted to achieve, even as a 22-year-old, but I had no idea how to get there. There is just no roadmap. And that was the first time in my life that I didn't see a clear path. That's how I get over there to do that thing that I care about very deeply. And also, I want to carry my family, my community with me and do this work with them. How do I support them and stay connected to them and meet new people that I also care about while still trying to find my way there? And that was hard. And I think the first piece of advice I give to anyone that has identified their passion already is to keep diving into it, keep exploring it. I had a professor in college from Chile named Ariel Dorfman, and he was a writer. And I had him as a professor my last semester of college. So he was my professor when my dad passed away. And that was a fulcrum point for me to kind of say, what do I do? Where do I go? I have no idea. I'm sad. I'm angry. I'm just unsure of myself right now. And the advice that he gave me was, if you just follow your passions, everything will fall into place. And I thought at the time that was terrible advice because I didn't know what that would really entail. But he was, this brilliant, wonderful, caring man, and I trusted him. And it took about 10 years to find the perfect balance for me of passion and work, but I found it, and I've got it right now. So I don't know if intentionally all those steps prepared me for this job, but it's worked out that way. And I've been able to mold the job a little bit too. My board has let me mold the job a little bit too to fit both my passions and my strengths. So I'm very fortunate. I wasn't kidding. I really feel like I have the best job in the world. And I will be completely unemployable once they get rid of me in this job. I'm not going to want to work anywhere else after this. So, so I think the first thing is absolutely, if you've identified your passion, you just have to pursue it. And that means everything from reading everything you can possibly read about it, talking to as many people as you can talk to about it, find the experts in whatever it is that you're passionate about and learn from them as best you can. But keep exploring too. I mean, my passion was specifically in education and inequities there. That has grown dramatically. It was there initially because I thought if we can fix the way we educate people, then we can fix everything else. Everything follows education. And I don't believe that anymore. I think education is a key element of that. But how can you learn if you don't have a safe place to live? How can you learn if you don't have enough nutritious food in your stomach? And so on and so forth. All of those pieces have to be in place. And that's been something I've learned from this job and learned very quickly is the wide breadth of things that all have to be working in operation to make our society better. That's my passion now, is how do I help all these organizations doing that work? How do I help them do it? My second piece of advice would be to expect that you're not always going to have the perfect job or be in the perfect educational environment that you want to be in. And that's hard, but you have to navigate your way through it. I would never tell anyone to settle for anything, ever. I'm still the eternal optimist. I have my days when I'm not, but today I'm the eternal optimist. But there's still going to be challenges. There's still going to be resilience, and there's still going to be jobs that aren't what you expected they would be, or roles that aren't what they were supposed to be. You're going to have colleagues that aren't necessarily great to work with. There are going to be unexpected issues that arise that make what you're trying to do harder, and you just have to keep persevering. I guess that's my second piece of advice. And so many people, far too many people that are young, have already had to develop those skills and have already had to develop incredible resilience. And that ought not to be the case, but if you've got it, that is a tremendous leg up you have on everybody else, because resilience is a skill that very, very few adults ever develop. And when they do, that's so helpful. I don't know if I have resilience yet, but I've gone through jobs where I was uncomfortable. I've gone through personal tragedies and I've lost people that I care about. And that all makes the work harder to focus on. And the work is not the key, of course. It's one of the many things that you want to pursue in your life. That's fantastic. But for me, it was the passion. The job had to complement the passion. And I had to work and navigate a lot of different things to get there. And I hope all of you are able to have that experience too.
Wow.
The third and final piece of advice I would give you is expect that your passions might change. Let them evolve. Explore different things. And if you have to weigh the pros and cons of, oh, I can pursue that passion, or I can pursue that, or I just have to do something. I have to be somewhere. You have to weigh those things, the pros and the cons, and that's hard. There is no easy calculus or arithmetic to navigate that. So again, I guess that comes back to you just have to keep moving forward, and find the people that can help you do that. I guess that's not a terribly coherent piece of advice, but hopefully you can piece that together and find something valuable in what I just said.
I totally agree with you. And that's a very important part, that really none of us ever get to do anything by ourselves. We need others, and we need the help of especially those that have gone before us, and that can help us. So yeah, I think that's a very good question. Let me get on a little more lighted part of the program. I'm going to ask you a number of questions, and I'm going to have you answer the first thing that comes to your mind, okay? So first thing that comes, just go, we're going to go fast, okay?
Okay.
So we're going to start right quick with fun questions. All right, Bengals or Browns?
Browns.
Okay, LA or New York?
LA.
Pizza or hot dogs?
Pizza.
Favorite place to visit?
DC.
Baseball or football?
Football.
Favorite basketball team?
College, Duke. Professional, the Chicago Bulls.
Awesome. All right, those are good questions. That was good answers. Good answers. Thank you, Michael. Now, for young people that are passionate about an issue, that's some of the work that you did, that you expressed at the beginning of the show. We've got other people joining in, and they are passionate about something that they want to. They feel impotent, or they feel that they don't know, how to do it. How can they make their voice heard? What can they do? Who do they need to go to increase awareness of an issue?
That's such a good question, and I wish that I had a succinct, satisfying answer. I'll start with this. One of the benefits that you have as younger folks right now is that you have this incredible resource that is the internet, that makes the world so much more accessible and smaller than it ever was. At the same time, I would argue that the world is as inaccessible as it has ever been, in part because there are so many pieces of information out there that are not reliable. There are so many voices out there that are not out there to be helpful. And you have to try and find your way and to get your voice out there despite all of the noise. That's part of the challenge of my job, quite frankly, is how do we make our voice one that can be heard and one that can be trusted? And I want to do that personally too. I want people to hear me. I want to be heard. I have things to say. And I want to hear others, more importantly. I want to hear from as many people as I can so I can learn and be a better person and be a better professional. And that's very, very hard. So where do you start? I've bought myself enough time to try and answer the question now. I think that as pedestrian as this might sound, you could do a lot worse than starting by going to Google and trying to get a general sense of where do I go with my question? Where do I go with my passion? From what can I learn? I think going to your library, the Columbus Metropolitan Library is one of the best library systems in the entire country. They are eager to be helpful, even now when you can't show up to a library in person. And just, I want to learn more about this. Their whole existence is predicated on helping you answer questions. Go to them. They are far better than Google because they can customize it and give you a personal touch, and they can connect you with others that can assist you in your quest to find information to quench your passion. The library system is just a tremendous, tremendous resource, and you can access it again from the comfort of wherever you might be. And if you don't have a computer or you don't have Wi-Fi, they can help you too. They're eager to help anybody that wants to learn. I think the third thing is, and this is me being OCD. I apologize. I'm big on making lists. As I'm learning about who I need to go to, where I need to go to get information, who I need to talk to, I make lists of all of those people, all of those places, all of those resources. And then I try to slowly but surely get through everything I need to do, talk to everybody I need to talk to. If it begins with you emailing people and saying, hey, my name's Michael, and I'd love to learn more about what it is you do every day. You start with that. If you can't email them because you don't have it, you get on Twitter. You use social media. You write them a letter. You make a phone call. You try with whatever resource might be available to you to communicate and talk to others. Can you help me connect to that person? Can I go learn from that organization over there? If you need a ride to go meet them, find somebody who can help you with that. There's all of this is predicated on being able to work with others and finding a community to help you get to that information, that resource, that person, that organization, that place that can help you pursue your passion and learn more about it. None of that is to say that it's easy. None of that is to say that it's fast. But those are some general resources that I think can be really helpful. But there is so much on the internet too. And the hard part with that is, how do you vet? How do you know what's reliable or not? But once you find those resources, there is so much at your fingertips, as you well know, that you can access. And if you are smart about navigating your way there, and that's where some of the professionals can help you, that's just enormously beneficial. But the other thing you can do is really focusing on the people in this community that you can connect with. I don't care if they're professionals or if they're students or something in between. If they're senior citizens, there are so many people that know so much and that can answer so many questions. It's just a matter of how do I get to them? And it always just starts with one relationship. And you go from one, and that amplifies, and it amplifies, and then people are looking for you on your behalf with you. You just have to be able to reach out and say, I want to learn about this. I need some help. And that can be scary. I'm scared to do that today. I have to do that later today. I'm scared to do it. I don't want to ask for help. I want to do this on my own, but we have to do that in order to get the information we want to have and meet the people we want to meet. I hope that's a helpful answer.
That is very, very helpful. I think that's very, very good. Thank you for all of this information. I think it's really, really great, a great starting point. The library is a great resource, as you mentioned, and they are great partners with CLC. So thank you. Michael, you during our conversation, you have mentioned several times as far as developing relationship with other people. How do you do that? What are some tips that you can give a young person on how to be relatable and how to develop relationships with professionals in our community?
That's a great question. This is sort of the piece to it all that I do last, but I'll start with it because I think it's the most helpful. Once you have communicated with someone, met with someone, you've had that initial meeting or conversation, I always send a follow-up letter. Emails are great, but a letter that you can, even if it's just a couple of sentences, thank you so much for your time. I learned so much. I really appreciate it. Michael. It doesn't have to be fancy stationery. That means a lot to people. If you have access to the ability to write a letter to somebody, do that. Okay, to start, I think once you've identified the person you want to get to know, then it's a question of how do I reach them in a way that's going to be approachable. I always think email is a great way to start. A lot of people are old school and like to start with a phone call. I think that's harder to do now because everyone is so darn busy. If you email them, they can respond on their own time. And I think having a short, sweet, personal letter, or I'm sorry, email, here's who I am, here's how I found you, here's why I'd love to talk for 15 minutes over the phone, or get coffee when we can get coffee in person together again, or hop on a Zoom call or whatever. Here's why I want to use some of your time. I would love it if you could share with me. And I'm 17 years old and I'm thinking about studying biology someday. And I see that you have a master's in biology and yet you're working in the governor's office. And I just love to learn more about how you got there. I've got questions, short and sweet, a couple of paragraphs, and don't let it be generic. I think that's the other piece to that. Whatever your communications are, you don't have to copy and paste something else that somebody else wrote. Just be yourself. Be cordial, be polite, be gracious, but be succinct. People don't have time to read 50 paragraphs. They have time to read 5. And you'd be amazed at how in this community, so many people are eager just to talk to anybody that wants to learn, that wants to explore, that wants to have a conversation. And we're in a moment as a country, because of this virus, that it's a little harder to get in front of some people right now, but it's also a lot easier to get in front of others. You just have to know how to reach them. So if the person you want to talk to is a professional and you can find them online, you might be able to find their direct email. If not, you can probably find them on LinkedIn. You can probably communicate with them that way. It's, essentially email. Once you get out of that, it's a little harder. Social media is harder to connect with people one-on-one. It's always worth trying. I'm still trying to meet LeBron James. He's not responding to my tweets. I'll keep trying. Still trying to meet Barack Obama. He's not responding to my tweets, but I'll keep trying. But generally speaking, you can reach people that way.
Yeah.
That's how you start. Once you have the conversation, once you're at the meeting with the person, I think you want to go in prepared. You want to go in with the questions that you want to ask. You want to go in with the information you want to share about yourself. And even if you're shy, you can share a little bit and let them know appropriately and contextually what they need to know about you so they can be helpful during the course of your conversation. The other part is if you have a specific ask of that person, you might want to talk to me so you can get introduced to someone much more important and more interesting. So at the end of the conversation, maybe you can say, hey, Michael, this has been great. I've learned so much, even if you haven't. And then you say, can you please introduce me to this other person that I think you might know? You want to have that ask prepared so that there's some functionality in that regard. But just generally speaking, to build those relationships, it all comes down to trust. Can you trust one another? Can you communicate? And I don't care if that's someone you just met or someone you've known for your whole life. If you can communicate with them, if you can be polite, if they can treat you with respect and you can respond to that, great. That's going to result in a good relationship. It doesn't have to be rocket science, and yet it feels like it because we see people not being nice to each other so often. And it really just comes down to the kindness piece. If you can be kind, and they'll be kind to you, hopefully, because you asked for the meeting, they better be kind to you. Good things will come from that. And as I said, once you've had that initial conversation, that initial meeting, follow up with a thank you of some sort, and that kind of seals the deal. And then one of the mistakes that I often make, and that so many make, is that you don't continue building the relationship, even after that thank you. Even if you don't necessarily think you need anything else from them, or they might not think they need anything else from you, follow up with them in 3 months and say, hey, I just wanted to touch base. Thanks again for the time we got together 3 months ago. I wanted to give you an update. Or, how are things going? It doesn't have to be transactional. It's now potential relationship that can be helpful for you, and you never know when that's going to be the case. So that's why you always just be nice to everybody. That's how my parents raised me. Just be nice. And I'm not always good at it, but that reaps benefits from time to time.
That's amazing. That is amazing tips. That's pure gold. Thank you so much, Michael. I really, really appreciate giving us those tips. Tremendous. Well, time is flying by. Thank you for being such a great host. For guests, uh, we have some questions from the audience, so we want to start taking some questions. So some of the people watching you live want to have some questions they want to ask you. So
Okay.
here we go.
First question is, you seem to have reevaluated your path several times. How did you have the courage to change course?
That's a good question. You know, courage is probably too strong a word for it. And I appreciate the compliment. I think the harder part was that if there was any courage behind the decision to make a change, it was I'm going into something uncertain from something certain. And we all have to make those choices. And I think for me, I'm very risk averse. I'm an only child, OCD, perfectionist, Lebanese guy, lawyer. You know, I'm by definition, I'm afraid of risk. So I had a process for myself with each inflection point professionally. How am I going to minimize my risks as I make this change? And that's not the way that a lot of people want to do it. A lot of people like the risk. Part of the benefit of making a change is the risk. That's not been what has appealed to me. But I think the key factor for me was, do I know why I want to make this change? And am I ready to make this change? And as long as I could answer those two questions the right way, then I could make the change. There's a lot more that can go into individual decisions, right, to make a shift, whether it's from work to school, from school to work, from one job to another. And I've had the luxury of, in recent changes that I've made, I have a significant other that is patient with me and lets me make too many changes professionally. We now have a 7-month-old son. Before that, we didn't have the responsibility of having a young child. That changes. That would certainly change my calculus now if I wanted to make a change. I didn't have those pieces in place. I made all my changes either before I met my wife Lori or since, and she's been incredibly supportive. Having the people around you again to help you make those changes is critical. So before Lori, I have a very close circle of friends. Some people my age, some people that are older, and I could go to them and say, I don't know how to do this. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm ready. And they help me answer those questions. None of this I did by myself. I've been very, very privileged in that regard to have a family, either in blood or not, that's been willing to help me make these shifts and make them as seamless as possible.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. All right, here comes the next question.
Sounds like you've had a winding career path. What part did networking play in your ability to pivot from opportunity to opportunity?
A huge part, and not even intentionally for many of them. One of the challenges once you have a job and you want to change jobs is that you have to do that kind of quietly. You can't necessarily broadcast to your current employer, I'm trying to get out of here. whether you want to leave on whether you want to leave on good terms or not, you have to do that quietly, and you can do it quietly in large part by networking. Now, some people are just naturally good networkers. I'm not good at schmoozing. It makes me uncomfortable. If you're good at it naturally, that's fantastic. If you're kind of awkward about it like I am, you have to be kind of deliberate about how you pursue expanding your network and then utilizing your network. But at every stage for me, professionally at least, I was able to work with the people that I was fortunate to know and meet people that I needed to know in order to pursue a job. And I'll tell you, when I was unemployed and was in between working on a campaign and finding this job, the best piece of advice I got was from someone that I had just met. One of my childhood friends introduced me to her, knowing the kind of job that I was looking for. She was a former attorney. She had worked in nonprofits and was currently working at a nonprofit. And one of the challenges that I was having was that I didn't know how to talk about my skill set as a lawyer, where I've never managed a team, I've never managed a budget, but I wanted to work sort of as an executive at a nonprofit. And I couldn't convince anybody to hire me for that kind of role. So I had a great conversation with this person I'd never met before. And I said, how did you do it? She told me how she did it. I then did it. And then I got a job. And now every time I see her, I give her all the credit for me having a job. That was networking having a very tangible benefit. It's not always that seamless, but absolutely networking was critical at every stage, and I'm sure will continue to be the rest of my life.
Awesome. Yes, very important to value those people in the relationships. Thank you, Michael. Let's go to the next question.
Being a Lebanese immigrant, how does it affect your work ethic and your work values?
I think having the privilege of knowing my family's history, and I don't know it fully, unfortunately. The story kind of gets lost after a couple generations, but knowing that more immediate family history gives me a lot of pride. And thinking about my ancestors and what they had to do to get here, what they had to go through, and they were far more fortunate than many and most. That motivates me every day. And, you know, my parents were first generation. It's different for first generation and second generation. My parents were raised without being taught Arabic, which is the native tongue of Lebanon, because their parents, my grandparents, were really concerned about them assimilating in the United States at a time when being different and standing out wasn't seen as a good thing. When I was being raised, Lebanon was in the middle of a civil war, which was in the news. People in this country didn't think very favorably of Lebanon. Some bad things were happening, and Lebanon had done some bad things. So we didn't talk about that when I was in elementary school, but I saw how my parents and how my grandmothers took pride in their country, in our country, and that just kind of stuck. And part of that was, I think, a work ethic, and part of it was a passion for food. I wrote my college essay on how much I loved eating in my grandmother's kitchen. And for some reason, I got into college, even though I wrote about food. And we can talk about, Lebanese restaurants sometime. But, I'd be lying to you, though, if I said that my culture was, I should say, Lebanon's culture was as imbued in me as it is in others. I didn't grow up with Lebanese music. I didn't grow up with, Lebanese texts or books. A lot of people did. And I went to a dear friend's wedding in the fall. She's also Lebanese. I met her in law school, and she's a lot more Lebanese than I am in that regard. But I think that, everybody has their own lessons that they take from their family history. And some of them, it's all from the same place, and some of them, it's from all over the place. But for me, if I take nothing else, I take great pride in the humanity that I think I inherited from my family and the work ethic that I try to carry forward.
Awesome. We're going to have one more question, two more questions. And okay, so here I'm getting the question. Your job is based on a 40-hour work week. How many hours do you typically work pushing those passions that you have?
So is the question, how do I use my 40-hour work week now, or how many hours do I work now with my passion, or before?
Yes. So if you have like a 40-hour week, how many hours do you put in to move forward your passion? Like,
oh, I see.
Limit yourself to 40 hours, or how do you manage your time?
Right. So I feel very lucky in that my job is one of my primary passions at this point in my life. So I'm probably working 60, 70 hours a week, depending on the week. Um, that's one of my prime passions. The other is spending time with my wife and son. I spend as much time with them as I can, and because of this particular crisis, I'm with them 24 hours a day. So I'm very fortunate in that regard. I have a very close relationship with my mom and a very close circle of friends. They're part of my passion too. I don't get to see them as much as I'd like to, but that's I talk to them a lot. Technology has made it a lot easier to talk to them, especially now. I love sports. I miss sports dearly. I know that it's one of the easy sacrifices that we've obviously had to make to be safer. But I very much miss watching basketball in particular. That's my favorite sport. That's my biggest passion when it comes to sports. I wish that I could still play it, but I'm old and my body doesn't let me. I love reading. I have a passion for reading, and I do not read as much as I ought to read. I love exercising, and I do not exercise as much as I ought to exercise. I think I also love to eat. I eat plenty. That isn't a problem. I'm very fortunate to be able to eat plenty, and I do. I need to eat less. If I exercise more, then I could probably eat the same amount. But generally speaking, in all seriousness, my job and my family are my primary passions, and I get to do those all the time now. And I'm very grateful for that.
Yes. Well, here, one more question. Well, actually, there are a lot of questions rolling in, so but we're running out of time, and I just want to ask you this one: what social media do you use on a regular basis?
Good question. Yeah, so I use 3, well, 4 if you count LinkedIn, but I use Twitter all the time. That's my best news aggregator. I've made lots of friends on Twitter. I learn lots of information there. I connect with a lot of people for work, and in my personal life on Twitter, I use that way too much. I use Facebook much less than I used to. It's more of a way to connect with family, but also some colleagues professionally. I use Instagram for my close circle of friends and family. And I use LinkedIn to network professionally, although I use LinkedIn the least of those 4.
Awesome. Well, Michael, thank you so much. I think we're to our limit in time, but I just wanted to say thank you for your time. I know you have so much offering to give, and I feel like we are not taking advantage of the opportunity we have to talk with you. But the information and the points you share with us today have been of great value to our participants, to our youth, and to our audience, and I'm really appreciative of that. So thank you once again for your time. Thank you for having that kindness and willingness to serve others, and we appreciate you being with us today. Anything else you would like to say, Michael?
Well, I would just say thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your day. I know you have a million other things that all of you could be doing. I hope that I haven't wasted your hour. If I can be of any service, let me know. I'm so grateful that TLC is one of our members. I'm grateful for all the work, really critical work that you're doing, especially now in these times. And thank you for your leadership, both in deed and by example. I see CLC out there doing such wonderful work in such thoughtful ways, and that means so much. People see it. It has an effect. And I'm grateful to be in a position where I can support all of you as you do that work. So thank you. Be safe, and have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you so much, Michael. You too. Enjoy your day. And thank you, everyone, for your time. Thank you for joining us in Walk in My Shoes. Looking forward to seeing you next Wednesday at 1 p.m. as we have another professional guest in our show. Thank you for your time. Have a great day. We'll see you here next week.